Hello there, my name is Bill Benson, and I'm a member of the church's SLI team. And over the last couple of years, we've done a lot of work on a lot of different things, but one of the most important things that we've worked on in the last year or so is looking at the church's structure and how it's set up and where we would want to go with that going forward. So today's presentation basically is going to be about a planned change that we're working on, and we will be voting on this coming in September. I'll give you more details on all of that a little bit later in the presentation, but let's get going on the presentation. So the first thing we want to look at is where are we today and how's the church set up and what's going on. So today the situation that we're in is this. As we began looking around and looking at all the numbers at the church, and so what we have today, unfortunately, is we have declining attendance and also declining revenue. So what we did was we started taking a look at what we could do to kind of solve this problem. Right now, we started looking at, well, where are the people within the church and where do they live? And we came up with an area that we call the area of influence. On this slide, what you'll see is this is a pin map, and on this pin map, this pinpoints where everyone in the church lives. But as you can see, people live all over, so we came into an area that we call the area of influence. And this area of influence is shown on this map, which is a little bit on the outside of 85 and a little bit outside of 77, and it goes up basically kind of into Huntersville. Where this information comes from is the Methodist Church provides a product. It is called the Mission Insight Tool. And so all of the information that I'm giving you today is all based upon that Mission Insight Tool. So what we did is we took this area of influence and did the numbers from the area of influence and kind of based some of the information that we have based on this area of influence. So as you can see, that over the next 10 years or so, the amount of people that are moving into this area is actually very tremendous. The numbers that you'll see on there actually brings us to the point that we'll probably have close to 50,000 people move into this area of influence. So one of the things that we were looking at is with these 50,000 people moving in, how do we reach these people? What can we do to get there? And how do we reach these people to get them to come into our church and participate in the ministries that we have going on and, of course, add new ministries to it? So with the Mission Insight information, what you'll see here is the racial breakup of the overall area. Many times in presentations or conversations we've had around church, you will hear the term 40-40-20. Which means basically 40% African American, 40% white, and 20% other. This slide here bears out that information to show you that that's what the future is as far as what our church is all about. And a couple of good things on this slide that I see here is if you look at it, the average age of someone right now in our area is only 35 years old. The reason that excites me is this, is we have great programs at church that we've set up with our children and our youth and our music programs and many other things that we have going on that really fit a 35-year-old. And the reason it fits that 35-year-old is because that 35-year-old, chances are they have young children or children that are at least in junior high and high school. So with that is that we fit into this demographic very well, especially with the age thing. Now, one thing I did notice kind of interesting is over the next 10 years, believe it or not, the actual age average only goes up only by 3 years. So it just goes to show that we can programs we can establish today, we know that they'll be able to be ongoing and work for at least for the next 10 years. All right, let's define some things that we have here at church and the way we kind of work. One of the things that we do is we have technical work and we have adaptive work. And people ask, well, what do these terms mean? Now, technical work is when we have a problem and we know the answer to the problem and we know how to solve it. But adaptive work is problems we have, but we don't know how to solve them, and there's not an expert or someone that can just come out and fix the problem for us. So for an example of a technical problem is that, let's say that we need to paint the building, right? Well, that's a technical problem, and it's easy to solve as we know that, hey, we can get a budget on it, we can hire a painter, and we can make it happen, and that's solving a technical problem. But an adaptive problem is something like this. Well, this is a problem that we have. Is let's say have all these people that are going to be moving in over the next few years, but we say, how do we reach out and get to these people? There's not an expert that's really going to tell us how to do that. And it's going to take some what we call collaborative thinking for people to sit down and come up with some ideas that can make this happen and solve some of these problems. And that's what we call adaptive thinking. Today in the church, this is kind of how we're set up. If you notice at the bottom of the slide is you're going to see the trustees, finance, SPRC, and the nominations committee. And this is the building block on the way the church is set up today. And if you look and you go up above that, you'll see where we have the map in the middle, which is our ministry action plan, which is based upon our church missions, values, and vision. So with that map plan, what it does is that all the other ministries around the church kind of funnel into the map plan because they are looking at how do they fit into what we do as a church. So you'll see some of those on there as missions, youth, different outreach, children's ministries, church council, things like that. But they are all part of the ecosystem of the church, but really it's built upon those four main committees there at the bottom. So a new governance model is what we were looking at, because we got to thinking about how can we work and make things at the church more streamlined in making decisions, okay? So today the situation is, if you go back to the slide that we had just a few minutes ago, is you have four committees. But if I, as a person, come and I say, I want to start up something, or people within the church decide that they want to start up something, what happens is that we really don't know where to go. Because if I want to start something, I've got to go to trustees to see if they can approve it. Then the next one I'll go to is I have to go over to the finance committee to see if there's any funds to make this happen. And the other one I have to eventually go to is I have to go over to staff parish, because I need to see, is it going to create any staff parish issues or anything like that, or put load on staff parish person. So for me to get something going, that would take multiple meetings, not only for me going to see these individual committees, but no telling how many times the committees may have to meet and then try to communicate with each other to try to get something done. It's very much a process right now that if you want to get something done at church, it takes forever to get this done. So what we have come up with is to have what we call the Simplified Governance Program, or with that is today we've renamed it to be the Board of Stewards. So part of this is not to have fewer people making decisions is not the goal, right? Part of this is making the decision-making process streamlined and easier. A couple things you'll be reading off here on the slide are the members who have been United Methodists for a long time, sometimes they feel the loss of the mandated administrative councils, and operating in separate bodies can be perceived as a power grab or a loss of important checks and balances. What you'll see in what we've done is we will have a document posted online. When you see this, you can also get to that document online. It's called the Guiding Principles. And the Guiding Principles, what this will do, this document, it comes along and it tells us the rules and the regulations by which we're going to be able to do this management team. And these, the Guiding Principles, once I read this over, it was put together by several members within our church. And listen, this is a great document which tells how the church is going to be run and how this committee can work, what they can do, and also what they can't do. So there's several steps to get to this simplified structure. On the slide you're going to see we're down to about step number 7, because where we are today, we're kind of in between, I believe it's 6 and 7. So at this point, we've gone through and we've notified the district superintendent, and they're on board with that, and he's approved that we go do this. We recently had an administrative council meeting, and at that administrative council meeting, the administrative council voted to allow us to go forward and bring this to the congregation. So on September the 21st, what will happen is we're going to have a vote of the entire congregation. They called church conference. We'll have a vote of the entire congregation, and the congregation will vote to approve or basically disapprove the plan. If the plan is approved, at that point, nominations committee will bring forth it's going to be 12 people, will bring forth the 12 people that are going to be on the committee. Then what will happen is we'll have our regular fall church conference where we approve the budget and other things that we always do. our slate of officers at that point in time will be approved there in October, and from that point forward, we'll move forward with the simplified structure or the Board of Stewards. So how are we going to make up this leadership team? Well, here's an example of how it's done. There's going to be 12 people on there, but actually it's a grand total of 14 people will be on the board. 12 have voting rights, 2 do not. The treasurer and the senior pastor cannot vote. So it will look like something like this on the slide here. You're going to have a council chair. We'll have 2 members acting as or 1 member acting as a SPRC coordinator. Another member will be acting as a trustees coordinator, and another member will be acting as a finance coordinator. Then, because of the fact that we have two pastors here, is we have to have 2 people that are appointed as delegates to annual conference, and then we'll have the rest of it will be made up, at-large members will be made up on that team. So how will this team work? So as you can see in this slide in the center is the leadership team, and all around it are all the other things that go on around church. So for example, the children and youth are a ministry that goes on outside of that group, but it also shows 2 blanks over there, and I was thinking about 2 things that could go in that blank. One of those is, let's say the garden outside that we've done. That's an ongoing ministry that is set up under a group of folks that keep that garden going all the time. Another ministry we have here is so-and-so's. So-and-so is a ministry of folks that meet and build crafts and everything, and so so-and-so's is a type of ministry. But you'll also notice in there are these squares, and those squares say ad hoc. Now, what is an ad hoc team? An ad hoc team would be something like this. Let's say that Staff Parish, for example, they need to hire someone, fulfill a position. What they would do is they would create an ad hoc team of people that's not on the committee, but there would be other members of the church, and they would convene that team, and that team would go and interview people and do the legwork, so to speak, for hiring someone. Then they would bring that candidate back to the Board of Stewards, and the Board of Stewards, all 12, would vote for that person. Another thing is like in trustees, for example. Let's say you had a project in trustees. What they would do is you could form, and let's go back to painting the building, that's kind of on my mind right now. But let's say we're going to go out and do painting of the building. What you would do is you could form a team of people that would go and they could do bids and look at the colors and all the things that go along with painting the building. But once they get all that work finished, they'll bring that back to the Board of Stewards, and the Board of Stewards would vote on it, and that team would at that point just disband. So it may be a 3 or 6 month team. So that's what we mean on the ad hoc teams there. So how the simplified structure works is this. Let's say or pretend that we have 4 hats. So what will happen is during discussion, when it comes up time for a vote on one of the 3 committees, being staff, parish, trustees, or finance, is the 12 people that are on the committee, when it comes time for a finance discussion, at that point in time, all people on the committee essentially become a member of the finance team. And what will happen is they'll have the finance discussion and go through it led by the finance coordinator. And if a vote comes up, all 12 members on that team will vote for that finance decision. After that part is done, let's just say the next discussion is going to be around trustees. Well, at that point, what will happen is the trustee coordinator will take over the discussion. But if it comes to a situation where there's a vote, all 12 people around the table get to vote on that trustee decision. And last but not least on there, let's say it's a staff parish decision needs to be made. Well, what would happen is that the staff parish coordinator would take over the conversation, and then at the end of that, if there was a vote that needs to be taken, all 12 members would vote on that staff parish thing. So the advantage to this is, and I've experienced this over the last 6 or 8 months since the great COVID thing has hit us, is that many times when it comes to making a decision, I've been in meetings where we were getting ready to make a decision on something, but it was a finance question that came up, and the finance chair didn't have an answer to the question. So what happened is they had to go back to the finance committee, so they had to convene another meeting, and they had to have a meeting in finance, and then the finance chair had to come back to the trustees to say the whole thing. So the reality of it is something that could have easily been solved in one meeting took, in essence, 3 more meetings to get this done. So that's kind of that's one of the big things about doing this in the situation of the 12 people. The other piece to this is adaptive thinking. Is on the adaptive thinking part is that a lot of times people around church, we have ideas about what we can do, or we don't strategically look at something. So what happens is now is part of the challenge or the charge of this particular board of stewards is to do the adaptive thinking. So they'll have time where part of their thing is to come together as a group and to think about all the things that need to be done here. It's like, how do we reach out to the community to let people know that we're even here? You know, a lot of times with those trees out there, it's hard for people to see us. So how do we let people know that we're in the community? Or if we want to start a ministry of some time to reach out to the community, how do we get that done? Today, sometimes it's not clear in the way to get that done. But somehow we got to sit down and start thinking about where do we go and how do we move forward and take advantage of all these people moving into this area. What we want to be in the final analysis of this is we want to be a lean, mean decision-making machine. And that is what we need to do here, is become a lean, mean decision-making machine, because there are going to be some decisions that need to be made, and they need to be made in a collaborative effort of the group and to move forward with those. All right, so how are we going to do this? I'd mentioned previously the document of guiding principles. We had a committee of 7 people, all well-known people within the church, who sat down with Francis Sojourner, who was our lead person on the guiding principles, and they devised the guiding principles document. The guiding principles document is going to be on the website, and you'll have a link to get to that document. I encourage you to read the guiding principles document. I believe you'll be impressed with how well that thing's been put together and all of the things that are in it that make sure that we stay on the right track. If you want to know more about this, send an email to Rhea, and she will forward those emails out to what we've created now as a transition committee, and we'll be glad to get with you as far as an email response on any questions you may have. You'll also find on the website is a frequently asked questions document we've put out there, and hopefully that'll answer all of your questions, but you may have one or two that's not there. Just let us know what those questions are, and we'll be glad to get those back to you. So our next step after this is on September the 21st, we will have a church-wide vote as to moving forward with this plan, and I'm looking forward to that. Thank you very much.